Welcome to the Today's Leader podcast. Building tomorrow's best leaders, today.
Way to go, guys. Way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul, I see you. All right, Travis. Finish. Coach Carl. Let's go. Great job, guys.
Hey there, it's Coach Curl here, and welcome to episode 406 of the Today's Leader podcast, Building Tomorrow's Best Leaders Today. Today we have a real treat for you. We have an engaging and dynamic guest who's known universally as the Recruiter Guy. I'm really pleased to welcome Bill Humbert to the show today. Bill's had a lengthy and extensive recruitment career, and on today's episode, we explore some of the myths and some of the truths around the recruitment industry from someone who knows. After all, he did write a book called Expect Success, The Science of the Over 50 Career Search, as well as two other books, leading books in the recruitment, on the topic of recruitment. Now, this is a must listen for every aspiring leader out there who wants to understand the recruitment process better. And after a word from our sponsor, please welcome Bill Humbert to the Today's Leader podcast.
Podcast is brought to you by Think and Grow Business, the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
And it's my pleasure to welcome to the Today's Leader podcast, Building Tomorrow's Best Leaders Today, the author of a new book called Expect Success, The Science of the Over 50 Career Search. Please welcome Bill Humbert. How are you, Bill?
Tony, I'm well. How about yourself?
I am fantastic. And as we were just talking, I'm your future, you're my past. So here we are, right. You're Utah and I'm Brisbane, Australia. And I'm imagining it's still a bit cold there in Utah this time of year.
Hey, we're a ski resort. I'm at 6,800 feet above sea level.
So you're cold.
We're cold.
Bill, it's a real pleasure for you to join us today. Share with our audience the Bill Humbert story.
Well, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version.
Awesome.
I started out and was born in Washington, D.C., 9 blocks from the White House. Closest I ever got to the presidency and closest I ever wanted to get. And I grew up in Maryland, and I started working and making money at the age of 9.
Okay.
And I had a Washington Daily newspaper, so I had my own business. I had to deliver the papers, I had to collect for the papers,
and
then pay for them at the end of the month, and whatever was left over was mine. And I did that for 2 years, and I got a Washington Post paper route too. So I was working 7 days a week, getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning and getting the papers out before school started. And I used that money to pay my way through a Catholic high school because I was the oldest of 7 kids. We weren't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. So I had to pay my way, and then I paid my way through college too. And I guess that kind of tells you a little bit about my work ethic. And over the years, Linda and I got married after college, and she and I have been married now 48 years. We have 2 daughters that we're extremely proud of, and now we have 2 granddaughters. Each daughter has a daughter. So that's kind of the real quick Bill Humbert story. We moved to Park City, Utah in 2009. So we've almost been 13 years now.
Excellent. And you're a professional recruiter by trade or occupation. What drove you into recruitment?
I've got a great story about that. I was in construction in the DC area for about 8 years, and then we moved to 30 acres up in north central Maryland, up in dairy country, and I didn't want to do that 65-mile drive every day. So I went to a local farmer and said, "Hey, do you know anybody that needs a help?" And he said, "Yeah, Danny Roop's starting a fertilizer business. Why don't you go talk to him?" So Tony, I started selling fertilizer to farmers.
Okay.
And my first day, he said, just go out and talk to some farmers, come back tomorrow and tell me what you learned. Now, you have to understand, growing up in the D.C. area, there wasn't a lot of land open to play football, so we played street football.
Yeah.
Go behind that Chevy, I'll hit you. Well, I get up to the farm, and I found this farmer, and I heard music playing in a building, and I went into the building, and I said, the farmer was cleaning the udder of a cow and getting ready to stick the milker up on her.
Yeah.
And I stood behind the cow, and the cow's tail went up. For me, that had no special significance. Fortunately, the farmer looked up, grabbed me by the shoulder, ripped me out of the way just in time to miss the shower. And then he looked up at me and he said, "City kid, huh?" So I did that for about a year and a half, and then somebody came up to me one day and they said, "So, Bill, you're pretty good at sales and you're really good with people. Have you ever thought about being a recruiter?"
Yeah.
I said, "No, why?" And they said, "Because you'd make a lot more money." "Oh, where do I sign up?" So that was 1981, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. And during that time, I guess you've seen the recruitment industry change markedly. So how would you sum that up?
Well, we started off with getting resumes. Either people dropped them off in person or through the post office, through the mail. And then we got computers, and the computers were really, in 1984, 1985, those personal computers were really slow and not so good, but they were good for storing people's information and their contacts. And then, then the internet came along in 1992. That's when Monster got started, and that's when OCC was started, and that was the Online Career Center. And I was actually on the Online Career Center because I was on a contract with MCI Telecommunications at the time. Yeah. So I was one of the first recruiters actually on the internet searching for people.
Okay.
And, and then since then, what's really changed everything in terms of the career search is the problem with algorithms and HR screening qualified candidates out.
Yeah. So is that the reason why you've now written the book called Expect Success? So, but before we go on to that, when you say screening qualified candidates out, what in effect are we talking about? So
think about human resources.
Yeah.
What are the functions in human resources? Benefits, compensation, employee relations, leadership and development, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
With the exception of recruitment, all of those are either compliance or administrative functions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Recruiting mirrors the sales process perfectly, line by line by line by line.
Okay.
Now, how well does a salesperson do when they're managed by a compliance person?
Yeah, but I would imagine they would be incredibly hamstrung.
That's correct. And besides, HR doesn't hire salespeople because they don't trust them. And so you want to know why they're having problem finding people. They got the wrong people looking for the people.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we maneuver in this current world? So if, and your book is really specific for the over 50 career search. So what compelled you to write it?
During the beginning of COVID-19, so let's say March 15th, 2020.
Yeah.
From that date until December 31st, 2020, I coached 32 professionals to find new positions.
Okay.
And they had already, by December, had accepted those positions. 11 of them received more compensation than they did prior to leaving their company.
Yeah.
And 4 of them received 30% more.
Okay.
And so I'm a recruiter. I know what you can say when it comes to salary negotiation, and I know what you better not be saying. And so the majority of those people, everybody of those 32, with the exception of 4 people, were over 50.
Okay.
And I thought, man, these people don't have any clue how to find a job, and they're scared. They're afraid. They've heard companies don't hire people over 50, which is a lie. And so I had to build their self-confidence back up and then get them working on it. So I thought, I need to write a book to help these people.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, to be honest, because you hear so many stories around this, around the recruitment industry. You hear that you've got like 3 or 4 seconds to make an impression with your cover page or your cover letter or your front page of your resume. Otherwise, it just gets skipped. And then you've got algorithms and software bots that are looking for the key phrases. And if it's not in there, you just get skipped. So are they myths, or is that actually what's happening?
So, Tony, I was timed in 1993 when I went through a stack of resumes. And I didn't know that Andrea was timing me.
Okay.
And she was behind me, and I had 3 stacks. Definitely interested, definitely not interested, and the very painful, I'll take another look. Those were the 5-page resumes, and I was like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
And so when I got finished, there was probably about 120, 130 resumes in there. When I got finished, Andrea kind of startled me because I didn't know she was behind me. And she said, hey, I timed you as you went through those resumes. And I said, well, I probably shouldn't have said this, but this is what I said. Didn't I give you enough to do today? And she said, Bill, I knew that you're training me to be a recruiter.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I asked you how much time you spent on a resume, you'd have no clue.
Yeah.
I went, that's true. She said, you spent as little as 2 seconds on a resume, and those went into the definitely interested and definitely not interested stack. You spent as much as 12 seconds, and those went into the definitely not interested and the painful, I'll take another look stack. You average 6 seconds a resume. Now, that was 93. I like to think, in the last 30 years or whatever it's been, I've improved.
Yeah. And so in some ways, I'm sort of trying to capture that. So in some ways, you're spending more time on the ones that you're not going to look at, and the ones that you're going to look at are the ones that stand out. Have I summed that up well?
You've got that perfect. And then what I do is I'll go back and I'll spend 30 seconds on a resume on the ones that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of going into more detail, getting more of a sense. Is this person really a good fit or not? And then I spend, again, I get those sorted out, and then I look at the remaining, let's say 10%, and I'll probably spend a minute on theirs creating questions based on their resume for a phone screen.
Okay. So it's not like a customized phone screen.
Right.
Okay.
For that person.
So in a world that's an outside person looking in is very systemized and automatic, a customized phone screen actually surprises me, Bill. So
that's the reason I'm a recruiter guy. So, you're right on target, Tony. Very, very, very few people do what I do. And my model is very different as a recruiter. I work with one company at a time, and I charge them a flat monthly fee. And this enables me to recruit for them and also see where the holes are in their recruiting process and then consult back to them on them.
Okay. Excellent. So what are some of the mistakes that you see being made by people looking for a job, but let's focus on those ones that are over 50 and looking for their next career? What are some of the worst mistakes that you see, and how do you address and how do you work to improve those?
Well, one of the huge mistakes that almost everybody makes, because they want to do the easy thing, right? And plus they listen to Indeed and all those commercials of the job boards, and they say, just apply here and you'll have a job immediately. Well, it doesn't work that way. And so what happens is they post their resume online,
Yeah.
and then I hope the right person is looking at my resume. Come on. What's the chance of that happening?
Yeah.
And then they go into an applicant tracking system or a human resource information system. And what happens there?
Yeah.
You have those bots that you were talking about that start screening them out. Were you aware that a Harvard MBA could be screened out of a job because they did not list high school diploma on their resume?
Okay. That seems a bit counterproductive to me. I mean, Harvard MBA, I think, would automatically assume that they've got the education quals underneath that.
Yeah. They call it, the applicant tracking systems, HRS systems call it artificial intelligence. Tony, I call it artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't sound incredibly smart to me, does it?
Nope.
So even if with you as a recruiter, you're still only taking 2 or 3 seconds to scan a resume to understand that they're a fit or not. So what is it that you're looking for?
What's most important to me is if they have any accomplishments.
Yeah.
Because for me, that tells me that they're doing something.
Yeah.
You know, they're not afraid of failure. They're out there doing something. And then I look at their background. You know, you can, in 2 seconds, you can really cover a fair amount of ground on a resume, and especially electronically now today. And so, you know, do they have the right title? Do they work at a great company? What's their degree? You know, so you go through that very quickly, just instance. And so those are the things that I primarily look for in those first couple of seconds.
So if I'm putting together a resume for, you know, I'm over 50, I might be looking for a career move one day. If I'm looking to capture interest on the front page, do I have accomplishments right up the top? Do I have a summary? Is it like a LinkedIn page?
Right. I suggest to people they have maybe 4 lines of summary first. Yeah. Don't ever put an objective on the top of your resume. And the reason is it's not your objective that's important. It's the company's objective. Yeah. So put a summary, and in that summary, if there's any metrics of accomplishments that, you know, say increased sales over 25% during a down period, or, you know, whatever, during a recession. Those are things that are going to catch my eye pretty quickly.
Gotcha. Wow. And there's probably a number of over 50 career change people that are just thinking that they've got to subscribe to something that's probably what they consider maybe beneath them. They maybe entry level, maybe frontline, as opposed to being middle management or senior management of what they were potentially used to. How did you change the mindset of those people? Because no doubt they're coming to you thinking, I just need a job. I just want to, whether they've been retrenched or whether they've been, let go or they've just left because they hit their level. How do you work with those people to get them to see their worth?
The important thing to understand for everybody in this process is that either if you get laid off or if you've made the decision that I just can't take this anymore, I have to leave, you're going to experience all of the stages of grief. Yeah. And you have to work your way through them. And so that's really part of my first step, is to let everybody know, hey, you know what? You're going to go through this. I'm just giving you a heads up that everybody goes through this. And then I talk about how to work their way through it. And so when I'm coaching them, that's what I'm doing, is I'm helping them work their way through the stages of grief. And one of the ways to do so is to start doing productive things. So let's start working on your resume. Let's get this up where it needs to be. So now you're doing things that have to be done anyway. And one of the points that I make in my book is that it's really important for you to get a piece of paper, like a legal page, and at the top of it, write professional on one page and personal on the next, and then list everything that you do well personally first. And it might be a 2-day deal doing that, because your brain's going to play games with you and say, guess what? Yesterday I left out. And so then you do the next step. And the next step is to wash back through that list, because there's going to be things that you do well that you hate doing. As a recruiter, especially in a startup, a lot of times I'm the only person there that's got any HR stuff. And so then, of course, then humans being humans, there's an employee relations issue. And then they look around, they go, I guess Humbert's the only one. And I get stuck with it. And I hate it. But I'm really good at it. So it gets to my list, but it doesn't get the asterisk as something that I do well, that I enjoy doing. So that's what you need to focus on next, and put those asterisks on the things that you do well, you enjoy doing. And then you wash back through it a third time. And this is where the magic happens. Because then you create the story that demonstrates that skill or that experience that you do well, that you enjoy doing.
Wow.
And then that helps, that does a couple of things, right? It reinforces that person's worth. And then in addition to that, it starts to prepare them for an interview.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see a real shift in mindset, just going through that and looking at your successes and what you've done, and then crafting that storytelling aspect is absolutely critical, because from what I can still gather, most of the interview questions is always about, tell me about a time when.
Exactly.
And it's all behavioral interviewing questioning. So it's all about, tell me a time, and you can, if you're skilled in the recruitment game, you can normally tell when someone's sort of fudging the facts or generally trying to stay general without getting specifics. So, but to actually go through and do that as preparation, as part of your process, I would imagine it preps the person for the interview, as well as heightens their self-esteem and their own self-awareness, and gets them ready mentally for an interview.
That's right. Yeah. So that's how I get them started. And then the book, all three of my books are written the same way. I don't call them chapters, I call them steps. And there's steps to take, to follow, to create your job and find your job.
Excellent. What about career gaps? How does someone deal with that?
Well, obviously, it depends on what the career gap is. If you spent time in jail, that's one thing. If you're looking for a job, that's something else. And the main thing about those gaps, it's important that in today's world, it's too easy to check and see if you've started on May 5th and ended on the next year on May 12th, and then you were out for a month or 2 months and then started in July. I had a candidate once, it's actually happened twice now that I think about it. Of course, over 41 years, that's not bad. But they were told by somebody else to close that gap on their resume. And so instead of, let's say they were let go on January 31st and they started on March 1st, they added 2 weeks and subtracted 2 weeks and said they left one and went right to the other. And the company was an amazing company. And the Friday before the person was supposed to start was when that company got the background check information and discovered they lied about their end date and their start date, and that company rescinded the offer.
Ouch. Yeah.
So tell the truth. That's the important thing. And, there's lots of good reasons to have gaps.
Yeah.
So just tell the truth.
Yeah. And I suppose even if you have been somewhere like jail, it's probably best to let people know why and what it was for, and maybe what some of your learnings out of that experience have been. So at least you've walked out of that with a positive. So I suppose my final question on recruitment, you mentioned startups before, and we've got a lot of talent sitting there in startups, and as we know, there's also a pretty high failure rate, especially around in the tech space, and some get invested in and go on to great things while others don't and falter away. As a career executive in an organization, a large multinational, you've got specific roles, you've got specific tasks, you've got specific results that you can hang your hat on. When you're a startup, the odds are that you're wearing 3 or 4 different hats. You may not even be leading someone specifically, but you may be part of a general team that are got this energy and working towards that. What are some of the tips that maybe you can share with some of those startup entrepreneurs on how they can capture their experience that they've had within the startup space to best match what a recruiter potentially is looking for?
Well, Tony, you're right on about that. I was on a recruiting contract. I was brought in by the venture capitalist, and my first day, I was the 12th person sitting around a conference table just outside of Boston.
Yeah.
And I had the venture capitalist on my right side, I had the founder of the company on my left side, and I was recruiting.
Yeah.
And what was fun for me in that case, because you talked about maybe you'll have more than one job, or even as a contract recruiter, I helped them design their logo. You would have thought, right?
Yeah.
The recruiter guy was there designing a logo. And then, I helped them find about 12 or 13 people that first 2 months. And those people were doing everything. And I went up to one of them one day and I saw him carefully arranging photos and stuff. I said, "Don't get used to this office." And he had this look on his face. And I said, no, it's not about that. It's when you're in a startup, you're going to be in this office, and then tomorrow you're going to be in that office, and the next day you're going to be over in that office, and you're going to be doing different things. Just make it easy.
Yeah.
So the smart recruiters, the professional recruiters, the recruiters who are sales professionals like me, they're going to understand that in a startup, you're doing a lot of different things. And I was a recruiting manager for a pre-IPO startup, and I was really fortunate that we went through the IPO and I got the stock. But even there, I was doing a lot of different things, and my resume really doesn't reflect all of that. But my most important work is reflected, and that was the metrics of how many people I helped recruit, and that the person that was reporting to me, 3 out of 4 quarters was selected the employee of the quarter for HR, and it's because I kept good records of what she did, and then when it came time as a manager at the end of the month to put those forward, she was an easy choice. And the only month she didn't make, she had a baby. What a slacker.
So once again, it's about accomplishments as
Right.
opposed to tasks.
Right.
Okay. Excellent. Who's inspired you on your leadership journey, Bill?
There's a fella that was one of my clients, Joe Patton. And I worked with him first in 1996 and 1997. And he is an amazing leader.
Yeah.
And he and I developed a personal relationship as well as a professional relationship. And fortunately, that contract was when we lived near Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and he lived in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And he then brought me into, he ended up selling the company for so he was in there as a turnaround specialist. And so the company that owned that company said, "We want you to sell it." And so he did, and then he formed a company by the name of Mainstream Management. And he brought me in on 9 different contracts with Mainstream Management, different kinds of companies, and helped him fill positions that were required. But what I learned from him was not from when I was working with him. It was for during those quiet moments when we were just having heart-to-heart conversations.
Yeah.
And so Joe and I, boy, that's gone back since '96. So we've been friends for a long time, and we visited him and Leslie, his wife, in last May, and it was fun to get together with somebody post-COVID as much as we could be post-COVID at the time. So Joe is definitely my person.
Excellent. What about failure? Let's talk about your relationship with failure.
Failure is really familiar with me. So, I'm used to failure. And it really doesn't bother me. Of course it does a little bit. It's that punch in the gut, and then you go, okay, so how are we going to recover from this? So I have so much time, or so many times that I recovered from it, that failure and I get along pretty well.
Yeah. Excellent. and once again, it's just one of those things, isn't it, where failure is part of life. If we're not failing at something, it means we're probably not trying at something. So it's just part of what it is that we do. I'm always reminded of a quote that Mac Story said to me and Mac Story is well known in the States for blue collar leadership. And he was saying, Tony, it's not like we look at a baby when they're trying to walk and we say, look at that baby failing. It's learning to walk. And that's that's the way he looks at all sorts of failure. What's the book that's had the biggest impact on you?
So professionally, I'm going to give you two. Professionally, it's a book by Dr. Brad Smart called Top Grading.
Okay.
And it was the best book I ever read on selecting, mentoring, and retaining top talent. And so that's a great book. Personally, this goes back to the 1970s. It was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, the old, and just some of those old, of what people would consider older style books are just so relevant. You look at Covey's books, you look at a lot of John Maxwell's early books, and they really are setting the standard for still today, which I think is phenomenal and just represents the talent of those particular authors. Let's talk about your vision then moving into the future, Bill. What does that look like?
Well, if it's my vision, I want to stay active as long as I can. I'm 72, and there was such heavy betting that I wouldn't see the age of 21.
Yeah.
That and it wasn't health, it was because I was pretty adventuresome.
Yeah.
And so at this point I can say, I beat you by 51 years. Yes. And so I'm proud to be as old as I am.
Yeah.
But one thing that Joe Patton and I share is we're going to keep working as long as we can. As long as we enjoy what it is that we're doing, we're going to keep doing it. And my wife is retired as an ICU nurse, and I'm really proud of her. I tell her she finished at the top.
Yeah.
When she finished, she spent 9 years at the University of Utah in the neuro critical care unit.
Yeah. Wow. And Bill, you're still adventuresome, looking at and feeling your energy today. I can only imagine what you were like as a teenager and moving in through some of those troubled times. But I can certainly feel your adventure and your energy today. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you today on the Today's Leader podcast. How can people connect with you?
I'm very easy, Tony. You can reach me at recruiterguy.com. And I'm on Twitter at recruiterguy81, and LinkedIn, it's linkedin.com/in/recruiterguy.
Excellent. And once again, just thank you for your investment in Today's Leader, and I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you, Tony. It's been so much fun.
And now, it's time for Tony's 2 cents.
Now, I've worked with many leaders who've come out of the corporate world to help them create or grow a business. Now, they've either made the choice to leave the corporate world, or the choice was made for them in the cases of redundancy. Now, one of the reasons they look to build a business is due to their inability to get seen in the recruitment process. The inability to get seen. Now, Bill described the efficiency of the process of resume screening. And he gave us an example from the more manual times when there was no automated software to the automated processes that we see today. And the opportunity for any leader is to create a resume that's going to work in your best interest. And what I took away from the conversation was that stock standard doesn't cut it. And one of the key things in your job application or recruitment documents needs to be that the tailoring of the job search documents to be seen, to be heard, and in line with what the organization is looking for. One of the key takeaways that I took was the fact that your objective is immaterial during the recruitment process. And as such, it shouldn't be on your resume. It certainly shouldn't take up prime retail space on your resume. Your objective is not the important thing. It's the organization's objective that is incredibly important. And that is what must be addressed in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through a covering letter or something within your resume needs to speak to what it is that that organization is looking for. There was so much gold in today's episode, and I hope you really took that away. Some of the key points, the other key points that Bill made during the conversation. I really want to thank Bill again for his investment in today's leaders. And once again, as always, his links are in the show notes. If you're looking to build better leadership skills, check out the Today's Leader website at todaysleader.com.au. We really are driving a leadership revolution to build tomorrow's best leaders today. Today's Leader is a collective, the mindset to make a difference, the ability to create an impact. Think and Grow Business hosts our Today's Leader Mastermind. Think and Grow Business, where we focus on personal, professional, and business growth. Book your free 30-minute discovery call right from the homepage at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au. Don't forget, wherever you are standing stronger, braver, and wiser. Don't forget the golden rule. Don't be an arsehole. I'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.